Rockstep Radio, the home of swing dance on the radio.
Well, Scott Cupit, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to Rockstep Radio. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. This is exciting.
Do we call you Scott, Scotty? What do you like to be called?
Most of London calls me Scotty, so I guess that's fine.
We'll go on. I feel I don't know you well enough to call you Scotty, but if you're...
You can be informal with an Australian.
If you're cool with that, yeah, that's true. Then we can do that. Now, whenever anybody mentions your name, they always, or whenever I mention your name, people always say, he always remembers everybody's name. Is that true? Is this something you try to do on purpose?
Well, I do, but I do it naturally. I don't take photos of everyone and then stick them on my fridge. But and as the community in London's got bigger, I'm definitely perhaps not as good at it as I used to be. But yeah, for some reason, I'm quite good with names and phone numbers.
It's not a skill that you worked really hard at. You thought, I'm going to remember everybody's name.
No, but I think through business school, I was taught when you meet someone, address them by their name, and I think that naturally just helps.
Mm-hmm. So you're here in London.
Yes, I moved here 6 years ago. I was ready for a new adventure, and I had no girlfriend, no family, no business to speak of, and no real understanding of London. And it was freezing cold, and myself and two dancers hopped off at Heathrow.
And have you adapted now?
Totally.
Is the climate right for you?
I absolutely love London. I love the UK. I'm a huge fan and ambassador of it, really, even though I'm an Aussie. And of course, I love my homeland, but no, I can't get enough of London.
So you left your corporate career in London. You left your corporate career in Australia. What was that? What were you doing?
I was a corporate banker. I have a banking and finance degree and so forth. So, I was very much part of the banking world, worked for the Australian and New Zealand Banking Corporation.
And you said, what was it? An overnight decision? You just said, "Forget it. I'm going to pack up. I'm going to go do it." Did you quit that and then do the swing dancing in Australia for a while?
Yes, that's correct. I started Swing Patrol Melbourne and then Sydney. So there was a very difficult phone call to my father. Imagine they'd put me through a very good school and so forth, and I had a banking and finance qualifications. Suddenly, I'm phoning my father saying, "I'm going to give it all up and start a dance school." And so, can you imagine? It's a weird thing to hear over the phone, and I was so fervent about wanting to do something that made a difference, and I felt like I was a small cog in a very big wheel, and I don't know, it's just how I was wired. I just felt like no matter how good I was at the bank or not, it didn't seem to make a difference, and so I was very hungry to do something myself. It's just, people are wired differently, and that was me.
And could you ever go back, do you think?
No, I couldn't work for anybody. That's the thing. I'm very much an independent person and self-made, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, well, I can relate to that. So you don't miss it?
Not at all. I missed the camaraderie at first because, when you start your own thing, you're on your own. And I missed bouncing ideas off people. So there was elements I missed, no doubt, but mainly that was the community and the amount of people I dealt with on a daily basis.
So you came here, you already done Swing Patrol in Melbourne, Australia, and you launched Swing Patrol in London. Are Swing Patrol Melbourne and Sydney still going?
They're still going well, and there's some great dances still happening back in Oz. But yeah, back in February 2009, we launched it in London, and it was unbelievably naive of me at that stage. I just thought it'd be a great adventure, and I was ready to do something grand and different, but I hadn't factored in how hard it would be. And, I couldn't pay my rent for the first 6 months, and we had no students. We used to aim to get 10. If we had 10 in a night, we'd go and have a drink to celebrate. So with all the success and momentum of Swing Patrol in the last 5 years, I will never take it for granted because I am, like many Londoners, one of those that got here and just really found it a tough city, tough to live, tough to pay the bills.
So you worked on and you got that momentum, and then of course the big thing that everybody knows about is your Dragon's Den appearance with a lot of your Swing Patrol colleagues. What was that, 2 years ago now?
No, it was just July 20 last year, so it wasn't that long ago. It's hard to believe, isn't it? But it was.
Normally it works the other way. Normally you say, "Wow, doesn't time fly?" But it's in my mind that seems longer ago than it was.
Yeah, a lot of people have talked about it, and of course I was lucky enough to get a lot of media attention thanks to Dragon's Den and Deborah Meaden being involved and so forth. So, but yeah, it wasn't that long ago, and I had a great team with me, and mainly my teachers and so forth. So, yeah.
And has that changed the business in a big way? As much as you thought it would?
I didn't really know what would happen. It was very much jumping into the unknown. But even though that might sound a bit irresponsible. I didn't want to die wondering. Let's go on this journey. I've been given an opportunity to go on Dragon's Den. Let's just embrace it and take it.
Was there not the part of you that you say you wouldn't work for anybody else? Was that part of you not slightly concerned that you would be potentially giving away some of the control of your business?
Very much so. I lost a lot of sleep over it. And of course, after Dragon's Den, once you get an offer, there's obviously due diligence lawyers contact you, and they check everything that you said is correct and so forth. And then there's the contract and the negotiations to, sign the investor up. And that was a difficult period for me, because suddenly I'm so autonomous. I run the ship and it's my baby and so forth, and I love it more than anyone else. And suddenly here's the legal people pressing on me to sign this and agree to this and make sure when I make decisions that are over this amount. So yeah, that was a hard period for me to adjust.
Now, part of your pitch on Dragon's Den was the idea of opening a venue that was dedicated to swing dance. Now, that didn't go down well, did it?
No, the whole thing turned very sour. And actually, what you saw on TV was heavily edited. So, you saw about 8 minutes. I was there in front of them for about 70 minutes. And so they grilled me about my lack of knowledge about how much toilets would be, to put into a property, and car parking permits. And I really lost my way. But fortunately, a lot of that was edited out. But they didn't like the idea, and they hated the idea that I wanted an alcohol license, because I had this great vision of a 24/7 sort of swing hub.
It sounds great. I would
Thanks,
go.
Kevin. I appreciate that.
24/7.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I had the plan because I could see what Swing Patrol does. We have the after parties and the morning classes. I could see us using it. But it wasn't meant to be. They didn't like it. Deborah Meaden, who is fantastic, by the way, has since said to me, don't give up on that dream. We didn't think you were ready for it at that time. But now she understands the business better. She does see that there's merit in what I pitched. But I think, the nature of TV, it was a quick pitch. Perhaps I didn't pitch it as well. I was so nervous. I looked calm and relaxed, but I could feel I was sweating down my back and so forth. So,
and was that naive in hindsight, do you think, the idea of the venue?
I think now I know the show better. They're looking at you. Can they roll you out nationally? Yeah. Can you go global? So when you pitch something that's just another property, they own a whole bunch of properties. It's boring to them. It's not interesting to them. You can't upscale it. So, it was a great journey. And yes, it was a bit naive. Probably.
But from a business point of view, do you think it was naive? Or do you still think it's got legs?
I think at the end of the day, I know my business better than anyone else. And it's not detrimental to them. They have this snapshot. They have 1 hour to ask questions. So I think where I'm frustrated is that perhaps I should have pitched it better. But it's not naive of them. They only could go on the facts they were given in such a short time. And that's how it rolled.
Now, Deborah Meaden is always publicly enthusiastic about the business.
Oh, I'm impressed you've done your homework. She's fantastic, actually. She speaks so highly of us all the time on social media as well.
Have the business side, the business side of things worked out there? Is she satisfied, or is it a bit of a vanity project for her? Or
it's a good question. It's a hard question, but it's a good question. We're a service and not a product. And that's what she points out. You can't just make more of us. So she's proud to have us as part of her team. But I think she realizes that we're not upscalable like a product. But she also, in her eyes and my eyes, it's early days. So the first thing she said is, everything's in your head, Scott. What I want is a business that at a flick of a switch, I can tell how you're tracking in terms of workshops, classes, the festivals we run. And we've got that now. And our management information systems have improved by treble. And so it's thanks to Deborah that I feel like we're a stronger business now. And I can use that information and go to my teaching team, at certain venues and go, look, this is how you were tracking compared to last month, last year, 2 years ago. Here's the graphs. So I now have a stronger business thanks to Deborah's sort of input. Have we found that thing to take us forward? Not really. There's all sorts of things in the fireplace, and that's still happening.
Do you feel you're a stronger businessman?
Yes, I think I've had to, because, they were a bit shocked at first because I don't have any contractual, legal documentation with my teaching team, and there's 50 of them. And I tried to make light note of it, saying, well, I'm a vintage school. I guess we do it old school. I shake their hands. I look them in the eye, and we have an agreement. That's how I've always done it. But can you imagine, too, the due diligence lawyers who were trying to sign me up, they were a bit horrified. And then they realised I have no actual contractual arrangements with our venues either. Again, it's a handshake agreement. So they're like, how can this be? How can this guy that's been on Dragon's Den have no sort of a lack of legal sort of basis?
And have you had your fingers burnt there at all? Has that come back to haunt you, that approach? Have you had one teacher let you down?
I've had teachers where we've agreed to disagree and we've moved on, and we're not their cup of tea and maybe they're not my cup of tea. But no one's burnt us. Sometimes just some things are a bad fit, but no. So yeah, I think I'm a better business person, to answer your original question with Deborah, that I have learned a huge amount. I've also learned a huge amount because I've had so many offers, some good, some bad, because both Swing Patrol and myself have a much stronger brand through going on the TV and so forth. So yeah, I've had to be a bit more savvy and seek good advice.
Is she actively learning swing dancing? Does she come down?
Well, the great thing is we both have an involvement in Strictly Come Dancing. Her involvement was different. She was a celebrity, of course, and I'm just behind the scenes assisting in choreography.
Is that ongoing?
Yes, yeah. I've been working this week, and I'll be working next week with Daniel, the Irish opera country singer. So I'll be back on set Tuesday. So I assist Jenny Thomas in Charleston routines.
And that's purely behind the scenes role, or do we see?
Yeah, very much so. I used to work on the Australian show where they would film the choreographers and be part of the story. But from what I understand, the thought process on the British show is that it confuses the audience, so the choreographers are sort of hidden away. Right. That's just what I've heard. I don't really know.
So what makes a Swing Patrol lesson special then? What sets it apart from any swing dance lesson?
Well, I'm really proud of my teaching team, and I think part of that is that they, through sitting around a lot and discussing what is the experience a person will have when they come into a class. One, understanding that people are nervous and helping them relax and have a good time. Understanding that Londoners in particular, it's a lonely place. They're looking not just for dancing, they're looking for a community. So we'll do these tiny things at the start. And, some people makes them feel awkward. I'll go, all right, before we start, you're going to dance together for the next hour. Introduce yourself to 2 or 3 people you don't know. And suddenly, the awkward IT guys are suddenly forced to make a conversation with a couple of people, and it breaks the ice.
Yeah, and they might not be comfortable with it initially, but it helps to break the ice.
Then they look for it, yeah, and they're quite happy and grateful because I'm building a community, hopefully, as well as teaching good dancing. So, yeah, and then they get that really good experience, and our teachers are great. They understand that there's a joy in this dance that must be taught. Of course, that has to be wrapped up with good technique, good dancing, good well-pitched classes, great music and so forth. But there's a real joy to this swing dancing, and that has to be part of the classes. Yeah, there's occasion where it needs to be serious, the top-end stuff, where there's high level and people want to be yelled at and broken apart and put back together. But these are beginners walking through the door. The next morning over a coffee, they're not going to tell their friends that they possibly could be a world champion. Their friends are going to say, was it fun? Did you have a good time? Yeah, it was great. They knew what they're doing. You should come next week. And I think that's the strength.
How do you maintain the quality control across, how many did you say you've got, 50?
50-odd teachers.
Venues
Of course,
now?
they're
50
not,
teachers.
37 venues. And of course, the teachers, a lot of them just work 1 or 2 hours a week. It sounds bigger than it is, perhaps, because the great thing for the model of Swing Patrol is they're busy people with corporate jobs or all sorts of jobs, but they love sharing this dance. So we handle the big umbrella stuff, the insurance, the public liability, the marketing, and they can come and just teach and teach well. So how do we handle quality control? The graphs are very telling. If Swing Patrol's good at our marketing now, we've got brand. So we open a new venue, which we haven't for a year, by the way, because we've just been working on quality. But if 50 people come the first week and then 13 come back the week after, I'm going to have a coffee with my teachers and go, let's talk about what happened that night. But, so it's fairly easy to track what happens from that. But I also go and watch my teachers, and then I teach with them and so forth. I taught with one today who I hadn't taught with for 2 years. So I go and make sure I end up teaching all around the traps and just check in on everybody.
So the book is called Swing Dance.
That's right.
How did that come about? Was it your idea?
That was amazing. No, I got a call out of the blue after Dragon's Den, and I got call after call, so it was hard to weed out who was just looking for an opportunity to sort of jump on our momentum and who was the real deal. And Jackie Small Publishing called me. They do Kelly Hoppin's books and so forth. I'd never heard of them. And they said, look, we were thinking of a vintage angle. We just saw you on Dragon's Den. Loved how you presented yourself. Loved what you said. Come and see us. I still wasn't quite sure what they wanted. And then I met the commissioning editor and so forth, and they said, can you write? And I was like, well, I've written a lot of blogs and newsletters, but I don't really know what that's a big question. So they said, we think you should write a book on something you're passionate about, swing dance. And I was like, great, amazing. And they said, but the big test is you've got to write a few chapters about what you're passionate about. We're going to wrap that up, send it to the Frankfurt Book Fair. And then it all hinges on the response from publishers at the book fair. So,
and when was this?
Well, this was October last year.
Right.
So like October the 8th. And then I heard nothing for a month. And I forgot about it. I thought, oh, well, that's a shame. Probably came to nothing. And then they rang and they said, well, you're not going to believe it, Scott. It was globally well received. And I just seriously still can't believe that phone call. And they're like, it's going to be published across the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, Amsterdam, all sorts of countries. I can't even remember. And they said, and it's going to be translated next year into German, Finnish, French. And I was like, for real? And so I was just so stunned. And then they wanted this timeline brought forward because they continually saw the media interest in Swing Patrol and myself. So suddenly it was quite a quick turnaround. I effectively had 4 months to write it.
Wow.
And my wife is the art director, so she had 4 months to get, contact Getty's and all these archival libraries to find these amazing photos that are in there that have never been seen before, some of them.
Right, because your name's on the front of the book, but it looks like a collaboration. It looks like a real team effort.
My wife has collectively put as much work into this as me. And so obviously I've put her at the top of the acknowledgements and I'll be making a fuss of her at book launches and so forth. But she did an amazing job because a lot of the appeal of the book is how amazing it looks.
It's a visually beautiful book.
Some of the photos. And when she showed me, I was like, that's amazing. And how a guy that's run swing dance scenes for 15 years, I was like, how have I never seen these photos?
Well, this is what I was going to ask you. Did you know that all of those photos and all of that content from, newspapers from the swing era?
Some of them I did, but no, she went into the British Library. She did some huge research, and she haggled with Getty's, and then she was there's a group called the Frankie Foundation. She was liaising with them to get permission for photos, and those photos were owned by individuals, and we were sent off in all sorts of directions, and then photographers owned for certain photos. So it was a huge task, and I'll always be grateful to Laura for what she did.
And then you got your team involved on the photo shoot as well.
Well, that's right. So there's a section on, because it's a coffee table book. There's a section on how to dance, a great companion to your dance career, your dance journey. And so, you can get your smartphone out and download videos and so forth. So we needed a photo shoot. So I got some of my dancers that were available, and there's Ben and Simon and a whole bunch of the team, Sophie, a whole bunch of them that are in there, and they'll all be at the book launch tomorrow. So, they're excited. They haven't even seen the book, some of them, but yeah, it was great.
I was up in Leeds at the Leeds Swing Exchange
yes.
A couple of months ago, and I mentioned that I was coming to cover the book
right.
launch event, and somebody said, why do you need a book about swing dance? Why do you need a book about swing dance?
I think one thing that we're passionate about is to share the dance. It's still such a baby brother of other dances. Salsa dominates globally over swing dance. So we're always looking at fun ways to get this into the mainstream. And so, if I was on the tube today, I bet you 1% of that tube has heard of swing dancing and knows what it is or have heard the word Lindy Hop. So books like this, like I've been to Foyles this week, there it is, front and center. I've got a book launch at Waterstones this week. So I guess I'm proud that this is just another little thing that we're getting this dance. And I know Frankie Manning, he used to always want that. I remember having great chats with him in my car, and I was like, do you have any regrets? And he said, I always wish Lindy Hop was more mainstream, like ballet and others. Lindy Hop's such a secret to the world. So I hope that Frankie would be proud that we're putting this out there and putting Lindy Hop in front of the public.
You talk about people like Frankie Manning. You refer to them as old timers. When do you become an old timer? When does
isn't that a crazy thought? I live a life of a 35-year-old, but I'm certainly not. And it is funny that I have never been asked that, but I do feel like as time goes by and I get these students saying, oh, have you heard this? And I think like it's cycled round. Lindy Hop cycles around what's in and what's not and so forth. And I've been through a few cycles now. I feel like, I've pretty much seen it all. And then I feel like, I've been involved in this scene for a long time. And
but you will become one of the, eventually you'll become one of the older generation who, when nobody else remembers, how things were as things are now, does that brings a responsibility, doesn't it?
Well, I'm not sure if I might be referred to as the old salty dog soon enough more than anything, but there is a responsibility that a lot of us already have, that we were blessed enough to spend a lot of time with Frankie Manning and, meet this original Lindy Hopper. So I know in my teaching, every class almost, because I travel around the country, I'm lucky enough to work with some amazing ladies and so forth, we always incorporate a little bit of the history into our dance classes. So I feel that responsibility to pass on things that Frankie said, because it's part of the legacy of Lindy Hop. So, yeah.
The book, as you say, it's interspersed with mini lessons. Can you learn to dance from a book? Is it possible?
Look, if you're a Londoner It's a great companion. But if you're in, because remember, I come from a country that's so massive. So I personally know people that live in townships where there's about 20 people and they've got no one to dance with. They went up there as nurses or doctors and they literally cannot take any more lessons. Mm-hmm. And they're like, I don't know what to do now. I just have to give it up. So in terms of, you have to access what you can access. So I'd hope those people who live all over the globe and are sort of isolated, it's going to be an amazing resource for them. If you're in London, I'd say it's more a companion. You don't go actual dancing, and then when you got no one around, get the book out and watch some of the learning and so forth.
I actually read it on a plane, and
right.
When I was reading through the lesson sections, I did find myself doing
really?
some footwork on the
Great.
plane. So
there you go.
In that sense, I suppose it does work.
I feel like I've had a better response from non-dancers. They're like, oh, I'm excited about that bit, whereas the dancers are like, that bit doesn't grab me at all. I don't get that bit in the book as much. They prefer the stories, the funny stories I've put in there and so forth. So I think it's...
But from a beginner's point of view, perhaps you don't speak to so many beginners, and from a beginner's point of view, it probably is quite a nice,
I hope so.
reminder.
I hope it's a nice entry level that just gets them inspired and excited, because there's 4 dancers that have been focused on. And, it gives you the absolute basics to Balboa and collegiate shag. So let's hope it gets more people just intrigued with these dancers.
There's quite a lot about fashions in the book.
Yes.
Now, you're always well turned. I mean, you're in jeans currently, but you're generally very well turned out. You're quite passionate about. Certainly, your passion comes across in the book about the kind of the vintage fashions that go along with from the era and the scene. Where does that come from?
Yeah, I've been teaching today, so I don't always wear my fancy vintage suits. But if I go out, I'll usually be in vintage suits. I think that comes from the scene itself. The community has changed a lot. It used to be, you wouldn't see the well-dressed nature that you see now. But the scene now, it's so well-dressed because people have it's an immersive experience, not just the dancing, it's not just the music, it's what you wear as well, it's how you feel. And so I've really sort of felt that in London has really embraced that, and I guess I've become a Londoner, and I keep buying vintage suits. I'm always on the lookout for vintage ties. I was looking at some today. Of course, my shoes are important to me. You see, I've got these fancy leather shoes on today. And I love the vintage look, and so do a lot of the dancers. And so I think it's a great part of the community.
You on one of the men's fashion section, you did say that you must be clean shaven, and I shaved yesterday for you. I hope that's.
You're going to get me in trouble with all my hipster friends with beards.
So swing dance almost died out once. It's fair to say. Could that happen again?
Well, it died out. When you say died out, it still stayed and lived in homes. But yes, when bebop came along, you couldn't dance to it. And when Bill Haley came along and Elvis Presley, rock and roll took over because the dance follows the music. And so no one could afford the big bands. So when you say could it die again, people ask me that a lot because they keep saying, it's a fad, right? But I feel like that's where I feel a responsibility. Swing Patrol and other, there's a whole bunch of great schools around the UK and beyond. It's our job to keep it on the map, and I hope this book does that. So I think swing dancing, we can't just rely on the occasional Hollywood movie that has a swing dance scene. It's up to us to keep it cool and interesting. And, we've been dancing all summer at Spitalfields Market, on the Thames, Stratford Shopping Centre. It's us to put it in front of the public and keep it as this is the cool thing that London's doing. So, yeah, I think it'll stay there as long as people are driven and motivated in the scene to keep dancing.
So when I heard you working on a book, I just assumed it was going to be an autobiography. Was that ever an idea?
A lot of people thought that was going to be, but that was not what they pitched because the publisher do desktop things that are like how-to books. Mm-hmm. So this is a how-to dance, but obviously it's wrapped up with a lot of fun stories that I've put in there and the fashion and so forth. I think the autobiography, I don't think my story's finished. I don't know.
But is anyone's story ever finished? Will we see your memoirs at some stage?
Well, look, a lot of people have asked for them, and it's funny because people think it's a fun story. It's quite a crazy story. I moved across the other side of the world and suddenly ended up on the plinth and, all that stuff. So, yeah, I've got some great stories to tell, and some of them about my team, some about me, and we've had events where we've just had calamitous losses, and, yeah, it's probably a good story to tell at some stage.
So we're here in London, where space is at a premium, dance floors fill up quickly. Why Lindy Hop? Why not Balboa? Surely that would be the perfect dance in such a crowded city.
Wow, you've asked questions that no one's ever asked me before. I love Balboa. I love collegiate shag. I love Charleston, but I'm a Lindy Hopper. No, I'm number one at Lindy Hop. I think it's the greatest dance of all. I think it's the mother of all dances. So I could go a weekend dancing Lindy Hop happily. I could go a night dancing Balboa. But by the end of the night, I'm craving to Lindy Hop. And that's just me, as my book, as my swing patrol. So I think that Lindy Hop is the most visually appealing. Mm-hmm. It's perhaps the most accessible. But it's a good point. Boy, if we all were just doing Balboa, we'd have a lot more room because we do have problems. You're absolutely right. It's
when I visited various dancing venues in London, it's always a crowd to dance for.
Oh, look. And I mean, even today, I know I was teaching these beginners and we teach floorcraft from day one. We're like, you're Londoners. And you're lucky because you're blessed by, you can swing dance any night of the week and there's hundreds of people dancing.
Just keep it tight.
And so when you do this, you must, as a priority, the floorcraft is something we teach from day one these days quite fervently.
So what does the future hold then for yourself and for the business?
That's a really interesting question because obviously I'm still meeting Deborah about what is next. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned before, we haven't opened a venue in a year. People keep coming up to me and going, oh, it's amazing your growth. But actually, it's a slight myth. We had huge growth 2 years before this. But this year, I just wanted the dust to settle. And like, guys, let's just do what we do well. And so we haven't opened a venue since October last year. We've run slightly less swing balls. Let's do the ones we do really well, not just put on hundreds like we ended up doing last year for a range of reasons after Dragon's Den. And we've got our back-end systems. We're improving all sorts of systems thanks to Deborah and the support she gives us. So I think what's next is, we'll probably start pushing out again. But this year we've just focused on the standard of dancing. We've been getting historians in so our dancers can, I'm quite proud of the community. And, we've got names like, we got Norma Miller out this year, Jean Veloz last year. Mm-hmm. We've had Peter Loggins, who's an historian. And we've Sylvia Sykes, we've done Lennart, who's a Swedish historian.
And do you see that as vital to the business, or more? Is it more for your satisfaction and because you can and because you think it's important?
Yeah, I think what was edited out of Dragon's Den and upset me a little bit was I talked a lot about how I am a custodian, like many others, of this wonderful old vintage dance. It's not all about business. If it was all about business, I'd be selling Tic Tacs or something. Mm-hmm. This is a wonderful art form. And of course I want to be able to pay my bills, but I'll never make what I used to make in banking. And I'm cool with that. I love my lifestyle. I love what I do. I love the whole Lindy Hop community and the challenges we have and the growth we have and the journey we're on together. So that is what's important to me. But that is the business that it is. I want Swing Patrol to be seen as that it's a very community-based, community-aware business, but it's also a well-run business. And Deborah appreciates that. And it's sort of why I chose Deborah, because while a lot of it was edited out, I saw the sparkle in her eyes when I talked about the importance of this old dance to me, where others I could see were looking at me like, why are you on Dragon's Den?
Scott, great to see you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks very much.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.